It's a Sunday backyard day. I've got 75 miles on the week. That means I'm gonna do 4 yards, putting me at over 16 miles and hitting 90 miles for the week. For those that haven't been following along on the channel, I'm racing a backyard ultra in about 1 month's time. This is more or less crunch time, rounding out my final training miles. For those of you that already have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm basically going to run 4.166 miles every hour on the hour for the next 4 hours. I just started at precisely 1 p.m. 4.166 miles is the exact distance for 1 yard or 1 loop in the backyard ultra format. Where does that number come from? Well, you take 100 divided by 24 hours in a day, and you come up with 4.166. So, and on and so forth. So if you last 1 full day, 24 hours in the backyard event, you will cover exactly 100 miles. Today also I'm gonna have a little fun with it. I'm gonna be running in 4 different shoes throughout the course of this test run, or say 4 separate test runs. By the way, I have previously mapped out this exact route that I'm running today. There's a couple little loop arounds that I have to do. Hopefully I don't forget them, but I have done this loop so I know the distance. First shoe up is the Salomon Aero Glide 4 road model here. I'm gonna put a link to one of my recent Q&As where I do a mini review on this shoe. I'm also just gonna put the specs up on the screen here so I don't have to talk through 4 different sets over the course of this video here. This is one of my little extensions here to hit the mileage. We're running the long way around this triangle intersection here. Make sure I get to 4.166. Aero Glide 3 here feels nice and light on the run. Decently quick, measured 40 mil stack at the heel, which is quite surprising given this kind of light feeling and light looking shoe. I do have a US 9.5 here, which is borderline snug. I have a lineup of different socks to run in for the different shoes. I'll have time between each loop or yard to pick the right sock for the shoe that I'm testing. But this one at 9.5, stuck with my darn tough ultralights here. A little tapered at the front of the toe box. I feel the inside tips of my big toe. A little bit of rubbing along the interior there. Probably ideally have a 10, but for shorter runs, this is totally fine. And if you have a narrow foot, I would recommend true to size, but anything like a wide or high volume foot, probably want to size up. I'd likely want to have a US 10 here. Got my Stride Pod 5 on. I want to keep my average watts around, I would say 200 or maybe even less. Definitely take it easy on some of the inclines, easier than I would typically run. Just to set the stage, I am expecting to need to run at least 2 days, 48 hours plus in order to make it into the business end of this event. So that means you just want to dole out your energy in terms of Stride Pod 5, dole out your wattage sparingly and efficiently over the course of multiple days. Don't want to go out too hot, that's for sure. This is my first one today. But it is honestly quite difficult. I talked about it in that mini review. This shoe feels quick. The beaded supercritical eTPU foam really feels very responsive, much more so than purportedly the same foam in the Aero Glide 3 gravel. This one, I believe, the upper has just been tuned up a bit more fit-wise, security-wise, and it really kind of, I think, controls the ride of the shoe better. It really feels, the foam itself, a lot more responsive, less squishy than that previous V3 gravel that I tested. I am still looking to get my hands on the V4 gravel. Very interested to see if improvements in the upper, hopefully that will make the ride feel more responsive, less unstable, which I did kind of feel in that gravel V3. 8 mil drop here does feel somewhat moderate. I don't notice a big change from the heel to the forefoot, although I do notice The heel feeling higher. I just don't notice a huge transition along the way. Kind of smooth going from that 40 at the heel to 32 up front. Just past 3 miles, short of 27 minutes. So definitely running faster than I need to be, probably faster than I should be if I'm practicing for this event. It is a thing to actually practice running slowly, and trust me, you will be fatigued as these yards and miles pile up in this event. It's just a weird kind of thing to handle. So as you start running slower and you typically run your normal quote unquote easy paces a lot quicker, it just works the muscles a little bit differently. You may be landing on the ground a little further back, or just in an altogether different ground strike pattern, and that may work or fatigue the muscles differently than your normal kind of day-to-day runs. But yeah, the shoe just rides quick, so having a hard time reining it in right now. This will probably be my fastest loop. Being in this shoe, and also of course first loop out here today, is gonna get, clouds just broke, gonna get a little warmer for sure. And you know, even 3, 4, say 12, 16 miles, I do kind of get a little tired. I just remembered I was supposed to loop back through a parking lot as part of my course and forgot to do it, so have to add on a couple of extra blocks around the neighborhood, maybe 1 or 2 to hit the course distance here. I am testing road shoes though, so that's not a problem. Since I am ending at my front porch too, I could always run an extra lap around the block if I need to. All right, did a little shuffling around, made the mileage 8:59 per mile, 37:28 for 1 lap. First lap in my backyard practice today. That's actually a little bit too fast. I was going around the 50 to 52 minute range the last time I did it. Might want to go a little quicker just based on being efficient and having more time to rest and, you know, refuel, recharge in between loops. So might want to go under that this time around, but I don't think I want to go quite 37 minutes. I mean, that's going to slow down over time if I keep up that pace. Not going to last too long if I stick with that. Quick sock change, shoe change, Brooks Glycerin Flex here. Also need to have a thicker sock as I have a larger size here. Also swapping the insoles here. If you go back to that same Q&A, I talked about this being a weird kind of memory foam ortholite insole, and the shoe just flexes a lot here. I found it kind of flexing around my big toe, which I have problems with in ortholite insoles in general, but even more so with this kind of soft one, and of course the flex of the Glycerin Flex. Just kind of, I don't know, I think they need a little more stability around the inner edge here. I see what they're trying to do here, but it's giving me some problems. Got the new Purple Haze creepers on here. Again, this is a US 10 EU 44 here. Much more spacious inside compared to the Salomon shoe. The Salomon shoe is a 9.5 EU 43 1/3, so definitely a smaller fit here. I had to go with the thin socks on this one, but full change here. I'm also always tucking these lace ends in. You probably saw me do that, maybe in other videos even, and that's just so they don't knock into the stride pod here. If they're just loose, they'll be like a tick, 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 tick as they're swinging around when I run. Already breaking the rules a little bit here. Actually, in a good way though. I left a little bit early, 150. I finished that first lap so quickly that I'm just training here. I didn't want to just sit around for another full 10 minutes. I had about 12 minutes in between finishing that one and this one, so I didn't want to add another extra 10 when I could just head out and run. So start at 150 and adjust the rest of the hours accordingly. But you cannot do that in the race. Obviously, I would have to sit and hang out and wait. Immediately noticing the difference in stack height here with this one and the Salomon. 35.29 measured here. Salomon at 40 at the heel. 5 mil doesn't sound like a lot, but it is, guess, because of the flex grooves and stuff in this shoe. It just feels like a bigger difference even than 5 millimeters, especially on the forefoot where the majority of that flex is happening here. I've also, as you've seen, swapped the insole here. Thickness is about the same, but Ortholite does have a softer, denser feel to it. Probably adds a little bit more cushion, or at least the sensation of cushion underfoot. But again, I just didn't like that on the underside of my toes. I do think it is kind of a weird setup for a shoe that's purportedly leaning into flex with all these grooves. That's the whole kind of idea behind this shoe, to throw in an Ortholite insole on top of all that flex, which is just like known to dull the feel underfoot. So don't quite get that setup there, but I guess you have to make sure people's feet feel comfortable and soft underfoot. I'm sure you're wondering if these are actually going to be the shoes that I will run in the Backyard Ultra, and the answer is no. I'm just running in these shoes today purely for just fun, testing purposes. Gives me a good excuse to talk shoes on the run and get into 4 different pairs back to back to back to back, of course. My little backyard course here today is also mostly dirt, but nothing really trails over here. I'm very close to the lower end of the foothills here, so smooth dirt all around. Completely fine for pure road shoes here. Just a little tiny bit of dirt though. Oh my gosh, look at my white shoes here. Kind of like the Prodigio Pros that I had, or have had, in the sense that they were at one time white. I kind of like the flexy feel underfoot here. Just feels like a little bit of movement underfoot, a little bit of foot spreading out, as opposed to being more contained by the upper. As I was mentioning in the previous run in the Salomon shoe, how they kind of fixed that upper, gave it better foothold. Here, nice wrap around the foot, but on the underside of the foot, feeling the ground underneath your foot. Just kind of nice. A little bit of, I don't know, just feels different underfoot. Kind of nice. I could see myself running some light trails in this shoe just because I kind of like the feel of it. I like the flexiness. It's easy to maneuver around, as long as I don't get that toe rubbing that I got with the Ortholite insoles. And I would feel that on my first road runs in this shoe towards the end, maybe 45 minutes, an hour in. I would always kind of have that creep up on me. So hopefully that goes away here. Kind of a cool sensation too here, going up a little bit of an incline. You just feel like the shoe is spreading out underneath your foot. It's not like a barefoot feel, because obviously you have a lot of cushion, all that rubber between you and the ground, but just that sensation of the shoe itself spreading out underneath each foot strike feels nice, kind of fun. Speaking of flex, but in terms of a pure trail shoe, I do have a pair of the upcoming On Cloud Soma Inbound. Has a similar kind of flex groove underfoot that's set up with differing pods there. None of the typical hollow Cloud Tech pods that On is known for. I forgot what they call that, but it's going to be more like pods like the Glycerin Flex here, where the foam itself, sections of it flex, not just compressing air between Cloud Tech pods. Really curious to see how that shoe feels underfoot, and now that I'm running this one, really curious to see if it kind of feels like this one. I believe it's a supercritical nitrogen infused EVA here. Nice and airy, nice and light. I do think it's a nice match here in terms of keeping the weight down, being that it is so airy. Got a lot of bits and pieces making up those outsole segments here. The upper is also quite robust, I would say. Not particularly lightweight, and it's only coming in a few tenths heavier than the somewhat smaller feeling. Again, I do have a half size down Aero Glide 3 from Salomon. This shoe's not feeling like a set and forget it kind of ride. It's definitely a shoe with this flexibility that does feel like your feet are doing a little bit more work, more so under the ball of the foot, around the middle. Heel feels pretty substantial though. Not so much going down back there to give you a good bit to crash on if you are a heel striker. Once you get used to that kind of feel though, it does feel smooth underfoot. Not quite as bouncy though, not quite as quick as the Aero Glide 3, of course. That one feels like a more direct feeling of bounce here. With this one, you're losing a bit to the flex of the shoe, which makes sense. Just past 2.5 miles here. I think I'm going maybe a little slower, but also probably still a little too quick. I'm not really keyed in on my mile checkpoints along this loop. Whenever you get into one of those backyard races, you kind of know or learn where the mile is, or maybe not necessarily on an even mileage. You'll just know particular landmarks along the course, and then you'll just check yourself 10, 20, 30 loops, how long it took you to get to that particular point, just to keep track of where you're at, how you're feeling. But right now, haven't done this particular course that I laid out in quite a while, so don't exactly know where I should be for target paces. I don't really have target paces in mind today, actually, anyway. I will say that the sizing here is much more comfortable. US 10, EU 44 here, Brooks Glycerin Flex. Check out my Cascadia reviews. Talk about a difference in sizing with that shoe. I've gone up to a 10.5 in the Cascadia Elite Trail Super Shoe. Here in this 10, I feel plenty spacious for a road shoe. I also have the Ghost Trail at home, which I have not tried out yet. That one I have in a 10 and also feels even bigger than this model. So there is something going on with the Cascadia Elite. I think it has to do with the Matrix upper, but I've heard a lot of commenters concur with me that it is borderline short. So again, I'm a half size up in that shoe, but typically in Brooks, I'm a 10 as I am here. Compared to the Salomon, I was just running into the half size down. Also feels much more comfortable here having the 10. Probably should have a 10 in that one, and for the version 4 gravel, I'll be definitely looking to get a US 10 for that shoe. Glycerin Flex here has actually been quite fun to run here out on the trails. I'm not sure how it would hold up long term. Probably have concerns about the outsole. It does seem to be a softer rubber. I did a treadmill run right away when I first got this shoe, and I definitely found a healthy amount of rubber shavings off the edge of my treadmill there. So definitely softer underfoot. Probably get pretty worn out here on the trails. Look at this 4.17 right at my house. 4.17, 38.18, 9.11 pace for my second yard over here. Felt still a little quick. 2:30, do another 11-minute break here, 10-minute break here. Start up again at 2:40. Change shoes real quick. Take a look at the Speedlands before I head out. RX FPY. You can probably notice something a little funky going on here. I was having some trouble with this shoe. You've only got a single BOA here, and it is typically connected to all three of these segments here, and I was having trouble locking down around my ankle enough as I would like without squeezing this bottom section too much. So again, normally this would be wired all the way around here, so you have one adjustment point here, and I would want to have this tighter. My heel was really loose, my ankle was really loose around here, but if I tighten this down too much, it was also squeezing this and like making my foot go numb. So I did a little modification here, essentially cut out the BOA and worked a regular lace through these bottom two, I guess, what do you call these, straps here, so that I keep this one pretty loose, and then that allows me to squeeze this one pretty tight. It's not ideal, but it's working a lot better and makes the shoe at least runnable for me, whereas before I really just could not get it right. Also, in the heel, I put in a couple of felt patches here. I had one felt tongue pad, and I cut it in half and put one on each side of the inside of the heel here. It's just really high volume. The shoe overall is high volume. That's why I have trouble kind of tensioning the entire thing down at once, because I don't have a high volume foot, and it also has quite a high volume in the heel cup, so it's just a large cavity back there. So I filled it in on the sides with these felt pads. That works better, plus my little lacing setup here, and it's a really nice shoe underfoot. It's just some trouble with their signature BOA upper here for me. Again, kind of loose over here, not too much. I feel like I got a US 9.5 here, so I'm not sized up in the Speedland shoe. It has been feeling a little short, I would say, for my sizing, but I am gonna try them out with the creepers here. It's definitely a half a thumbs or less. This is a road shoe, but I definitely would want to have more than this. I was gonna wear the T-free sock here from Sidus. It's a little thinner, but due to the kind of volume issues I've been having, I'm just gonna try out. It's only 4 miles here, so I might get jammed up at the front of this shoe here. We will see. Creepers may help with the volume all around though. Even as I'm kind of tightening up here, felt still a little looser than I would like around the ankle. Maybe I'll ratchet down just a tad. Even with those things stuck in the heel, it just feels very large in the heel area, at least for my foot shape. Speedlands are definitely made for high volume feet, no doubt about that. If you have a narrow foot or a low volume foot, probably not the brand for you. Super wide and stable base here underfoot with the RX FPY from Speedland. Noticeably different than last 2 shoes I was running in, Salomon and Brooks. I have been running this shoe a lot on the treadmill due to the fact that it does have that wide, stable base. I feel like I could just like pound away on the treadmill and don't have to worry so much about my ground strikes or treadmill strikes. With this shoe, just kind of like rolls along, and just midsole foam feels really good too, so been liking it on the treadmill. Do have to take a little pause here and dial back these boas. They're really on the inside, digging into the sides of my feet here. Still feel it, but it's a little better. This is definitely the least suitable outsole of these road shoes that I'm running in today for this kind of loose and sandy dirt. It's smooth slab of outsole underfoot, feeling a little skatey here at times. Aside from the outsole, I'm definitely feeling the pinch from the inside of that boa along the sides of my foot, especially on trail here. Anytime there's a slight angling or spot where my foot angles a little bit, it angles the inside of that boa, really jabbing into the sides of my foot. Of course, this is a road shoe, but I also have the GSBLK black model with the boa in the same position, at least the upper one, and I get the same thing in that shoe. My favorite Speedland shoe of all is the GLPDX, and of course that one has the upper strap in place of the second boa dial. I find that I could really wrench down that strap, and of course that doesn't bring the pressure from the dial into play at all. You have the smooth strap pressing up against your foot, which is really no issue at all, and then the lower boa dial doesn't really bother my foot. So that is the best Speedland model for me. So I have to say, I don't know how much Speedland testing I do have in my future here. I'd really love to try out the LDVL, their new model that also has the upper strap. But anything with their dual boa setup here, the upper boa has really been a fight for me, and all of their models to just make it work. It's a shame because I really love this shoe. I love the platform. I think the foam is excellent. I love the look of it, of course, but I just wish it had regular laces, honestly. Another feature of Speedland, of course, is their removable Carbitex carbon fiber plates. I've tried them in a number of their different models. Never particularly liked it. I always felt like it made the shoes a little bit stiff. And again, I'm a lighter weight runner. Perhaps for bigger runners, that added element of stiffness and also protection may be a positive for you. For me, it turns out generally to be a negative. So haven't used their carbon plates inserts in their shoes in quite a while. I tend to appreciate the flexibility of their trail models. That's why I don't use it in those. And I kind of like the geometry of this road model. Bigger toe sweep up front for the road, and just feels really smooth to me. Very nice, easy transition, and I just don't want to stiffen that up by throwing carbon fiber in the middle there. Had a question in my TT review about vest picks. I mentioned that I was running a lot in the Alpha 6. I also had a question from someone in my Zygo 6 review. They were looking to choose a vest for a long distance race, and they're finding the Zygos a little bit restrictive, maybe a bit too much structure. Could have fallen in between sizing there. I feel like that one is a little bit snugger relatively in the same size compared to other models. I recommended the Alpha here because it does have pretty decent capacity, and I just like the fit of it. It's less restricted around the shoulders. That means there's a little more coverage around the torso. Hey! Huh? Wife and daughter there out on a little mountain bike loop on a Sunday afternoon. Very nice. As I was saying, the Alpha, a little more body coverage here because it doesn't ride as high. Some people may find that preferable, keeping the shoulders a little more open here compared to the Zygo 6, and also that commenter had previously run in the big Bronco, and that one's certainly designed to ride very high up around the shoulder. So Alpha 6 is a nice one. For me, primary concern is it's very quiet on the run. I have to be worried about kind of things, tassels, clips banging around next to my microphone here. And I like that I could stash a bottle, use the blottle hose, keep even just one small bottle in the kangaroo pocket or bladder if I need to, and have less stuff bouncing around up front here, kind of going tick, 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 tick next to the microphone at times. Even a lot of these cords here you could easily tuck away. It's just completely silent on the run, which is nice. Being that I did switch vests after 2 laps, I left my spec notes in the other vest, so I believe the Speedland here is close to 40 millimeters. I'll double check that on my next loop, but very solid stack. The supercritical uncompressed EVA here, it doesn't feel super soft. It has a firmish feel, but very energetic. And like I said, I like the rocker up front. I like the smoothness of it. It feels just very, very easy to turn over. It's also kind of settled into the fit here. The BOA pressure is not so bad, or perhaps just getting used to it a little bit. I still feel it when I came up that little bump there. Whenever my foot is at an angle, that's when I really get it. But aside from the BOA situation, the rest of the upper is quite comfortable all around. Again, nice volume up front. The issue for me is that I can't tension it and leave it loose separately. But I can imagine for those of you that do have high volume feet, I can imagine the upper wrapping pretty evenly all around your foot, which I would imagine feels pretty good and comfortable. Sizing for me lengthwise is a little bit short. I think at 9.5, it still feels like, again, I'm wearing this thicker sock here though. If I had a thinner sock, it might be okay on the roads for sure. It's obviously a road shoe, but if I went up to 10, and that is kind of the case with some of their trail models, if I do go up to a 10 where I would have appropriate space in front of the toes, then the volume becomes just too much to manage with the BOA for my volume of foot. Let's talk hydration here as I'm rounding out this third loop here, closing in on 12 miles. I have my typical drink mix, which is something I kind of formulated. I have 1 scoop of the Feeds high carb mix, 30 grams of carbs. Then I have 1 scoop of Skratch regular hydration mix. That's about 20 grams of carbs. So that's a mix I'll typically prepare for most runs. It gives me a nice even 50 grams of carbs in a single bottle. No fuss in that regard, but it is a little bit low on sodium. 150 in the high carb mix and 400 in Skratch, which is nice. So that gives me 550 milligrams in 1 bottle there. And I'll mix that in a, say, 16 to 20 ounce flask or bottle. Now I know that I am a salty sweater, and typically I need in excess of 1,000 milligrams per liter, actually closer to say 1,500 in fact, especially when it's hotter out there. Skratch has come up with a new product which is called Electrolyte Booster, and you just add 1 small scoop of that and you could add 400 milligrams of sodium to any drink mix without changing the taste. I'm not certain how they exactly manage that, but I did test it out at TRE and I have that in my bottles here right now. You essentially get the same flavor with 400 milligrams of sodium, so you could essentially boost yourself up to the levels that you need if you are a salty sweater without making the drink feel overly salty. A backyard ultra is an obvious scenario for that type of thing because you are going to be running continuously both day and night, and of course that leads to varying conditions. Hotter in the day presumably, and much cooler at night. Less fluids needed at night, and potentially varying amounts of sodium as well. So the booster is a product that you can use to kind of vary the amount of sodium you need depending on how much you're sweating, changing conditions, without having to mess with or change your drink mix, the amount of carbs that you need to be taking in, independent of the sodium factor. That's the kind of scenario and variation that you would typically handle with salt pills or salt tablets, but this could perhaps be an easier way, certainly if you're preparing your bottles ahead of time, or you're in the type of event like a backyard ultra where you may have a crew preparing your stuff. You could really just baseline a drink mix that you're familiar with and you know that you like and can tolerate, and then just vary the amount of boost as necessary. This loop is going to be slightly longer time-wise. Stop to chat with the fam along the way, but I'm gonna again try to hit a 50-minute turnaround. So doing a little bit of enhanced backyard loops here, cutting out 10 minutes of rest each time, but need to save some time here in training. Just a quick wrap up on the Speedland RX FBY 4134 stack 7mm drop, the highest stack of the shoes that I've been running in today so far. Until now, that is. Mizuno Neo Zen 2 coming in at 4236 here. This is actually my first run in this shoe, first run in one of their Neo road models. I do have a UltrAspire review on the channel. That is their latest trail shoe. This one has a really weird feel on her foot. I'm not sure what is going on. I absolutely measured 42 at the heel, but it actually feels like the heel could be lower than the forefoot. It's got like a reverse stack situation going on here. It's very strange. I'm feeling some kind of block of cushioning ahead of the center of the ball of the foot, kind of on the front edge of the ball of my foot and the base of my toes in the middle there. It's really kind of weird. I feel like I'm rolling into like a blockage of midsole foam or something there. Very odd sensation underfoot here. Going from, I don't know, the first two shoes, I'm going from kind of normal to weirder and weirder as I go in these laps here. Of course, the Aero Glide 3 was more or less your standard ride, standard feel. Then you had the Glycerin Flex setup, which is what it is. Then the RX FPY with the upper issues that I've been having. And now this Neo Zen here, which is, I don't even know how to explain what I'm feeling underfoot. It's very different. Midsole foam here is Mizuno's Energy NXT foam. It's a supercritical nitrogen infused EVA. It feels very energetic to the touch, but on the run here, I don't know. It feels very absorptive underfoot, not very reactive. I feel like it's kind of soaking energy into the shoe rather than kind of giving it back to me, so to speak. I really can't get past the sensation on the run that the heel is actually lower than the forefoot. I don't know, it just feels like I am running a little bit uphill here, but even inside the shoe itself, it feels like I'm fighting uphill against the midsole. Very weird. Coming back to the structure of my little training session here, I'm in mile, say, 13 or 14 here out of 16. It's kind of a good way to break up a long day of training as I've been getting my mileage up. I've been doing a lot of doubles, typically splitting it into 7 and 7 or 8 and 8, hitting around 15 miles per day. And it's kind of a lot easier to do if you break it into 2 sessions, a lot easier on the body than running, say, 15 miles a day. Of course, there's times where you need to do that, your long run on the weekend, perhaps a workout run that just happens to be a lot of miles, or maybe a midweek, mid-distance run. But generally speaking, as a tool to get your volume up, perhaps without the impact, without the injury risk, come out here and run some backyard loops. I am doing a bit of an enhanced loop here, running a little bit faster. I've been doing these loops at 50 minutes each instead of the hour that I'll need, or the hour that I'll have in the real backyard event. But you can set yourself a timer, come out and do these 1 hour loops. If you're not up to speed to doing that fast, even maybe even run a certain distance within the hour, just make it whatever you want, and then time it out where you have some time to get back, refuel, recover a little bit. It can really make those longer mileage days a lot more palatable. You of course don't have to carry as much with you, maybe one bottle, maybe even eat a gel on your brakes when you stop back at the car or at home or whatever. It's just logistically a lot easier, a lot less to think about. Of course, variations in weather, variations in gear that you may need to switch into is also a lot easier. Just takes a lot of kind of the trouble out of a big long run, a lot of the logistics. You'll leave it at home or leave it in the car and focus on the running. And in the end, you're adding those miles all together. Probably gonna have the same type of aerobic effect, especially the more and more you do stuff like that. I'm a little beat up myself this week, flew back and forth across the country. Yesterday, I split up 15 miles into 2 runs, and today I'm splitting, little mini snake guy there. Today I'm splitting 16 miles into 4 separate runs with maybe 10-minute gaps in between, 3 10-minute gaps. Not so bad, and I'm able to still keep my mileage up. I'm gonna hit 90 miles for the week. Hitting that 90-mile mark, especially this week for me, definitely wouldn't be feasible if I was trying to pack everything into single runs on each day. Kind of getting used to the ride of this Neo Zen 2 here. Still feels a little bit soft, still feels a little bit dense underfoot. I don't know, getting used to it a little more, but the other shoes that I've run in so far earlier felt a little more energetic, a little quicker underfoot, that's for sure. More kudos here for the Electrolyte Booster from Skratch. I'm a little thirsty after the last couple of loops. Refilled my bottles at home, and I actually chugged a little bit before I left. It's just getting a little warmer. Temperature tends to kind of cook up here where we are in the valley. It gets warmer later in the afternoon here. So I chugged a little bit more fluids there, but with the Electrolyte Booster, I'm closer to the actual sodium concentration that I need. So I'm surprised, or at least happily finding that not having any sloshing at all. I also chowed down on 2 Rice Krispie treats. So I think with that sodium closer to my levels, really eliminating any sloshing I would feel if I just chugged down kind of lesser concentrations. Zen 2 here is also the lightest of the shoes, surprisingly, and even 9 ounces in my size 10 here. I definitely sized up because I know Mizunos tend to run narrow and tapered in the toe box. This one does too. I also, as you can see, changed my socks. This is not a creepers appropriate toe box here. Got the Sidus T-free in here, kind of thin sock, working well in this narrow toe box at the toes. Nice and cushy feel underfoot though. Can't shake the fact that it feels more sluggish than the previous 3 shoes that I've run in. I'm gonna have to go back and check pace, power, heart rate, all that stuff. I am in my last loop here, so I am at the end of this session, miles 13 through 16 here, so that could be a factor too. I'll have more to come on this Neo Zen 2, of course. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments. Of course, as it relates to the other shoes that I've run in today, maybe other shoes that I've previously tested. NeoAspire, Cloud Monster 3 Hyper, Rad UFO. I also have the Craft Endurance 3 in for test, which is, I believe, primarily a road shoe, but has an outsole that could handle some dirt like you see out here today. Also, probably a bit of gravel. Mount Deco C1, of course, H1 in the mix. Let me know your questions. I'll do my best to answer, as always. Thanks for tuning in, of course. Let me know what you think of this type of session. You get 4 shoes tested for the price of 1 here. Let me know if you have any questions about this type of training as well. Of course, the electrolyte boost and drink mix I talked about. I don't know, whatever you have. Maybe you have other thoughts and strategies that could work for me or that you would like to share with others. Post those as well down in the comments. Check out the website, of course, www.humblerunning.com. Like and subscribe. There's also a bell notification or something like that. Make sure you click on that one so you get the, I don't know, best notification when I release new videos. However that works. I'll catch you next time out on the road or dirt on the way to Banana Slug.